Hi guys. For math this week, we're going to continue looking at adding and subtracting when we're working into the tenths place. Now, I'm going to make the numbers bigger. So for the first one, it's we're working with numbers between 100 and 1,000. Now, if we are adding, we can look at two different strategies that we talked about last week. One I call the count forward strategy, which basically means that you just start with the place values and you say, well, if I have a question like 427.6 plus 193.5, I start with the hundreds and I say, well, 400 and 100 is 500, 20 and 90 is 110, 7 and 3 is 10, and then 6 tenths and 5 tenths, well, that makes 1.1, right? 11 tenths. And then I put those numbers together. So 500, 110, 10, and 1.1. That will give me 621.1. Some people, when these numbers are starting to get bigger, really prefer using the stacking strategy, and if they need to do some carrying. So with that same question, I've stacked them, and you'll see that the decimals are lined up and all the place values are lined up. And then I'll start over here with the tenths place, and I went 6 plus 5 is 11. So I put a 1 here, and we carried that 1 over to the ones place where it belongs. And then 1, 7, and 3 makes another 11. So we put the 1 here and carry the 10 over to the tens place. And then we have 1, 2, and 9, which makes 12. So that 2 goes in the tens place, and we carry the 1 over to the hundreds place. And then 100, 400, and 100 makes 600. And I get 621.1. It's the same answer either way, just two different strategies for finding it. For subtracting, we have those two kind of strategies, but in reverse. So you can use what we call the count back strategy. So my question here is 618.6 minus 237.9. So I would start with the hundreds place and say, well, 600 minus 200 would take me to 400. And then 10 minus 30, well, that'd be like negative 20. So we'll take 20 more away. It's like 380. And then 8 minus 7 is 1. So now my 381 would be there. And then if I look at my tenths place, I have 0.6 minus 0.9, which gives me negative 3 tenths. So I'm taking 3 tenths off my 381. That leaves me with 380.7. If you're using the stacking strategy, which is probably a little simpler than this, it's this one's much more in your head. This one here is much more down on paper. If you're using that strategy, once again, you want to make sure that your place values are nicely lined up, and then you start over here and you have 6 minus 9 in the in the tenths place. And so since it's 6 minus 9, we're going to have to borrow, right? If I went to a store with $6 and tried to buy something that was $9, I couldn't do it unless I borrowed. So I'm going to take a 1 from over here in the ones place and put it over here. Now I have 16 tenths. So 16 tenths minus 9 tenths is 7 tenths. Then I would be left with 7 ones minus 7 ones, which is 0. And then I have 1 10 minus 3 tens. And once again, I can't do that unless I borrow. So this 6 in the hundreds would become 5. And I'd move one of the hundreds over to the tens place. Now I have 110 there, or 11 tens. 11 minus 3 is 8, and then 500 minus 200 is 300. So my final answer is 380.7. So I have the same answer either way, just two different ways of getting there. On the back side of the page, I have 10 questions for you guys to do, 5 adding and 5 subtracting. I'm going to give you guys some time to work on those, and then I'll come back with a review video shortly. All right, thanks guys.